Hey, how's it going, everyone? So I have not made a YouTube video in forever, but I'm going to do a little bit of a recap slash tournament kind of overview of how I did this weekend at Smith Mountain Lake for the Phoenix Series BFL. So we were launching out of Parkway Marina. That's a big thing to really look at when you come to this lake, just because it is so massive. It's really hard to find places to stay where you really do want to fish. And another thing to keep in mind, if you launch at the state park or at Parkway, there's a $10 fee every day. So that can really kind of add up if you plan to come and pre-fish. Depending on where you stay and all of the gas prices right now, it's pretty wild. I actually stayed at Westlake Waterfront Inn, which is up the Roanoke, and in the springtime on Smith Mountain, the Roanoke is usually a little bit colder, depending on the weather, and the water is a little bit more stained. Usually I try to usually stay relatively close to the state park, Parkway Marina, or the Pinhook boat ramp, simply because of all of the tournaments that are coming out of Smith Mountain. So let's talk about the tournament itself. I'm not really going to give away any locations, but I will give a breakdown of what some of the fish were doing and what most of the fish were doing. So when I got there on Tuesday, the water was 51 degrees, actually 49 up the Roanoke, 51 towards Main Lake, and it was heating up a little bit during the day. And basically had these fish in kind of a funk. The water temp had dropped 5 degrees from last week. A lot of fish were up shallow. A lot of fish were in the back of pockets getting ready to spawn. But when the cold front came through, it kind of messed things up a little bit. So that was the toughest thing for me to determine in practice. I started out fishing shallow, running the backs of pockets. There were a few fish back there, but I could not locate the size that I was really looking for. Just to give an example of basically what was going on, we'll break down one of these pockets right here. So when the weather was nice, a lot of these fish, they were getting up they were staging on docks, and then the cold front comes through. Well, in my eyes, the cold front's going to push them out deep. Not deep, but it's going to push them out to the points, the deeper docks. So my main objective during the tournament is I was going to cover as much water as possible. I was going to cover as many secondary and even main lake points as I possibly could in the tournament day. And luckily it paid off for me. Basically the way these points work is there's two edges to them. You have a depression at the end where it drops off into really deep water. A lot of guys, they'll fish the point, they'll drag something. I was trying to cover as much water as possible. So I'm not going to disclose what baits I really threw. That's something for you guys to figure out when you go to Smith Mountain, because it is a very tough lake. It is very pressured. But basically these fish were starting to stage up on these secondary points. And I'm going to do a little drawing imitation of basically how these points work. So basically what you got going on is you got these points that come out. That's a bad drawing. But let's say it comes out like this, right? And then it drops off into deep water right here. It drops off to deep water right here. It drops off to deep water right here. Well, a lot of the fish that I caught during the tournament, you can look on Navionics, and the point usually goes something like this. If I can get a good drawing here. And that's the shallow stuff. So a lot of these fish, they were staged right here, right here, right here, sometimes on the docks and sometimes even on the bank. These fish were in a funk. So basically, they didn't really know what to do. Their main objective right now is to get on the bank, lay their eggs, and go back out to deep water. But a lot of these fish, they were coming out and suspending a lot. I don't have live scope or anything, but just from experience on this lake, I kind of had an idea of where they were going to be setting up on these points. Back to the map though, we'll break down another pocket. This is towards the dam. It's a lot deeper, a little bit colder as well, so that's something you have to look into. One big thing about Smith Mountain that a lot of people don't know, the river channel comes down through here and it bends right here and it keeps going straight. So these pockets, all these little pockets, the water is going to be a lot warmer than, let's say, the main river channel or a point close to the main channel, brush pile, etc., etc. So let's go break another point down. We'll break this one down because I did catch, let me see which point it was. Okay, this is the pocket. I did catch a 4-pounder out of this pocket. I caught a bunch of fish in practice. Not a bunch, but I was catching quality. That was the main focus for me. So Friday morning when I went out and pre-fished, if anyone pre-fished for the event, they know that it was very brutal fishing practice. We had upper towards 60-mile-an-hour winds some days, 20 to 40-mile-an-hour winds. And I rolled into this pocket first thing in the morning. I was throwing a spinnerbait because the water was a little stained in here, and I caught, it was probably a high 4, low 5 on this bank. And basically it's a secondary point, and then you also got another point right here. Secondary, primary, I don't really know. I'm not going to get into the nitty and gritty of that. These fish were simply staging on points, secondary points, main lake points, ready to spawn. Like, if you look at this main lake point that comes out, there's a pocket here. You know, there's gonna be a few fish that come into this little area to spawn. If you come to Smith Mountain during the spawn and you've ever looked on the bank, there's gonna be any upwards of 20 to 50 fish per pocket spawning. I mean, it's an unreal fishery. But basically what I figured out in practice is that water just had dropped, and you know, certain pockets were different. That's the big kicker on Smith Mountain. Every pocket is different. Every pocket, the water temperature is a little different. So you really gotta scout around. I really didn't fish that much in practice. You know, I fished a lot, but I did a lot of driving around. I was driving to the backs of pockets. I was looking at them. You know, you can look on Navionics and have an idea of what it's going to set up like. But the main thing for me was to really go back in the backs of these pockets and understand the contours, look for hard cover, and even graph some of the docks. There's a couple secrets to Smith Mountain that the locals really don't want to discuss. It's a very tough lake to fish because of all the locals and how good they are. Not taking any credit away from them. They are amazing fishermen, and they understand this lake better than most people. But there is a few secrets to this lake with the docks. You know, you have all of these docks, and I fished a lot of docks in practice. I didn't do well, so I started focusing on the deep water fish because that's where I was having my success. There were some, I'm pretty sure the couple of the guys that did win, they were fishing shallower docks. But the big kicker is how these docks set up. You know, all of these docks look the same. They all have boats hanging from them. Most of them you can skip under. But the biggest kicker is trying to locate the docks that are near or on secondary points. You know, you have this dock right here. It's probably going to be shallower, but then you look at this dock and it's going to be a little deeper. And I think the biggest kicker of all with the docks is it has to have a piece of cover on it. You know, your general dock is going to have 8 to 10 posts on it. And me personally, I did a lot of side scanning. I'd see a couple fish under docks. I couldn't really distinguish if they were crappie or smaller bass. But if I ever do go back to this lake in a pre-spawn event, I will definitely be focusing on more so secondary points, but really understanding the points. You know, you got a lot of points that come out. Where was that one point I was just looking at? You know, you got this point that comes out, and you can tell it's real long. It's got a drop off to it, but looking on Navionics is going to be your biggest kicker. The steeper the drop off, the less places those fish have to hide. When you have these long tapering points that come out and then slowly, gradually go down to that river channel or the channel inside the pocket, it gives those fish a lot of places to roam. So I really keyed in this week on trying to find those points that had some form of cover to it. You know, you can look at this one right here. And if you get on Google Earth and you adjust the time frames when the lake's a little lower, you can get a little better idea. But you can already see on this point right here that there's going to be a little bit of rock. Kind of looks like there's a tree there. Most of your points here are going to be rock, just straight up mud and sand, or you'll have some that have stumps on it, some shell rock. And you really just have to go and look at them and fish them, drag something on them to really understand the composition, side scan them. But the biggest thing for me was finding these points, you know, finding these secondary or even main lake points and really understanding them, because there was a lot of smallmouth that I saw in practice, caught during the tournament. And 90% of these smallmouth were coming up to these secondary points to try and spawn. And this lake is unbelievable in the pre-spawn. You know, you can go to the very back of a pocket and fish a point and catch a 5-pound smallmouth. It's just one of those things. Really getting to practice, really getting to understand the lake, and just putting everything together when tournament day comes along. But yeah, I hope that helped some of the people that are coming to Smith Mountain. Very difficult lake, clear water, Highland Reservoir. I'm excited to get back there soon. I'm not really sure if I'm going to fish any more of the Phoenix series, but I definitely will be back to Smith Mountain in the near future. So that is all I have. Feel free to comment if you have any questions. I didn't want to disclose too much of this just because it is a tournament lake, but I will say if you are coming to Smith Mountain Lake, the biggest kicker is gonna be staying in these small areas where your larger tournaments are going to come out. This lake has changed so much in the past 10 years with the tournaments on it. I mean, last weekend there was a 300 boat tournament coming out of the Smith Mountain State Park. So I mean, these pockets close by, it's just retread central. And then you also have some small little secondary points in here that those fish getting released would stage up on. I really hope in the future on this lake they really try to protect the fishery a little bit more, because these fish that are getting dragged around in live wells every single weekend and then released right at the state park, and then they have another tournament out of Parkway. A lot of these guys are just focusing in on these areas, catching retreads, and then go into their big bass patterns of however they catch these big bass. So hopefully in the future the off limits areas are a little different, because I don't really understand why you're gonna make from point to point at Parkway Marina off limits, but then you give the whole state park is not off limits. So yeah, that's very interesting to me. I am not one of those guys that's going to go and try to catch retreads, but literally on tournament morning in a BFL out of Parkway Marina, we all launched out of Parkway Marina, and there was 5 to 10 boats that literally stopped right outside the marina, and just started fishing. And it's like, it's just one of those things, you know. I understand the concept of it. We're fishing for a lot of money, but that's just my standpoint on it, you know. But yeah, so that's all.